Switch gears, want to go ahead and talk about the big story from college hoops on Tuesday night and really kind of do an extension of the conversation that we had on Tuesday night. The game, the story was the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky on the road beats Mississippi State 91-89. Wild game, crazy game. Kentucky was down double figures in the second half, rallied to take an 8-point lead with under a minute to go. Uh, Not very good from there, but they find a way to win thanks to the Reed Sheppard buzzer beater. Essentially, it was a buzzer beater. It's not technically a buzzer beater, but it was really a buzzer beater. We know it was. I bring it up because obviously with the win, great for Kentucky, but I also thought that was kind of a national coming out party for Reed Sheppard. Kentucky fans know how good he is. Diehard college hoops fans know how good he is. But listen, this is the last week of February. We're heading into March. People are starting to figure out stuff about college basketball. And that was a night where Reed Sheppard was the biggest star, not only in that sport, but I would argue in all of sports after that incredible game. 32 points, 7 assists, 4 3-pointers made, 5 rebounds. He was insane. After the game, we did a live reaction. We talked a lot about that. But on Wednesday morning, I saw something interesting that I do think is at least worth discussing here and at least worth diving into a little bit more. Immediately following the game, Reed Sheppard had yet another NIL announcement. That is not a knock. Good for him. It's the NIL world. Make as much money as you can, young man. And obviously, this NIL thing was in the works before the buzzer beater on Tuesday night. It was with WinStar, a local, I believe, a horse facility in Versailles, Kentucky, not far from Lexington. I've driven through there, etc. And this is yet another NIL deal for Reed Sheppard, on top of the Donato's Pizza thing he did with Rob Dillingham, on top of a Got Milk pseudo ad, something with the Dairy Council. The bottom line is I can't keep up with all Reed Sheppard's NIL deals. And again, good for him. No knock. This is the NIL world. And this, by the way, was what NIL was supposed to be. Use that face, name, image, likeness to make cash. That is exactly what he's doing. Good for him. But why I bring it up is because I was thinking about this, and I think it's at least worth discussing here in a little bit of an Aaron Torres Pod YouTube bonus clip. And that question, that conversation, that topic that is worth discussing is as follows. Is there any way, thanks in large part to NIL, that Reed Sheppard could actually potentially return to college basketball next year, in large part because he's making so much darn money as a member of the Kentucky Wildcats? Well, I don't think it's likely. I do think it's at least worth having the conversation about, and I'll be blunt. I don't think it's as crazy as many other people would. Now, as soon as I say that, I already know what people are going to say, and I know what people are going to say because I put it out on Twitter, and people were mad. Even Kentucky fans were like, Torres, don't even bring it up. It's not going to happen. And the bottom line is, again, I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think it's far-fetched for a few reasons. One, first of all, NBA contracts, listen, we all know the goal is to get to that second, third NBA contract when you make all that money. But in terms of what Reed Sheppard would be making as a rookie in the NBA next year and what he could be potentially making at Kentucky, I'll be honest, I don't think it's as different as a lot of people would think. You know that if we're talking about Reed Sheppard as a fringe lottery pick, I've seen him as high, I've seen him really high in some mock drafts, but I think the consensus is probably like the 10 to 15 to maybe even a little bit lower range. You know, the number 15 pick in this past draft only, and I'm using air quotes only because it's obviously life-changing money for just about anybody, but only made $3 million this season. I bring it up because when you start to total all of what Reed could potentially make as the face of Kentucky, I think, one, we are talking apples to apples in terms of actual monetary value. I don't know exactly what Reed's portfolio, it's cool to say that about an 18-year-old kid. I don't know what his portfolio is exactly worth, but my guess is if he came back as the face of Kentucky basketball, I think there's a chance that he could match or surpass that money. Now, I know what people are going to say from there. Well, Torres, it's not just about NIL. In the NBA, he would make a salary, plus he would make the endorsements that he could make in college. To which I would say, that's sort of true. But Reed Sheppard is also sort of the exception, isn't he? Because isn't so much of what Reed Sheppard's value is to all of these brands the fact that he's a Kentucky basketball player? In other words, all of these local deals that he's getting, it is as one of the faces of the Kentucky program, as a Kentucky kid who grew up in the state representing the state school. I don't know that all of these deals are still on the table if he's the 11th man for the Minnesota Timberwolves next year, or the 13th man for the Portland Trail Blazers, or he's playing for the Boston Celtics G League team. I'm not saying that's what would happen. Maybe he's really good, but one, I'll say this with his draft stock, this is not to tear him down in any way, shape, or form. But you read the draft profiles, and listen, I know it's a weak draft, but I think teams are still trying to figure out exactly where he is, exactly how he fits. He's a little bit undersized, not really a true one, but can play one. And so I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying I think his draft stock is a little bit more fluid, but I also think there is a ton of money for him to make as a Kentucky basketball player. Again, a lot of local deals that frankly probably will not be there if he's not playing for Kentucky. But then beyond that, he's not such a big star that he's a Zion Williamson or somebody like that that's guaranteed to make tens of millions of dollars just based on his name alone before he ever plays a game. Not a knock, just a reality. Beyond that, I was also thinking this. I saw a lot of this. Well, Torres, don't you understand that it's about getting to the NBA as fast as possible to get to your second contract? Yeah, I get it. I get it. Here's the thing, though. And this is an old Jim Calhoun thing. Yes, it's about the second contract. The second contract is the one that's going to change your life. But the bottom line is, to get to the second contract, you want to be in the best position possible to maximize it. Again, there are guys, Zion Williamson, Cade Cunningham. I can't think of any guys off the top of my head. Paolo Banchero is going to be there in a year or two. That they stepped into the league right away. They were a superstar, and it's just getting to that second contract as fast as possible. But if you're not totally ready to step in and be a star, teams move off you fast. Think about all the guys that have been drafted over the last couple of years, even in the top 20, that after a year, 2, 3, they're gone. They're out of the league. They're in the G League. They never make it out. They have to go overseas. And so part of the conversation about the second contract, you got to be ready to play. And that's the Jim Calhoun thing. Jim Calhoun, his what he always told his players, you can go back and look. Most UConn players didn't leave until they were truly ready to step onto an NBA floor and contribute right away, because what Jim Calhoun told them was the first contract doesn't change your life. The second contract does. And so you want to be in the best position to maximize that situation. So you go through Jim Calhoun's best players. Kemba Walker was a 3-year guy. Rip Hamilton was a 3-year guy. Ray Allen was a 3-year guy. Charlie Villanueva was a 2-year guy when he could have left after 1 year. Rudy Gay was a 2-year guy when he really could have gone out of high school. Definitely could have gone after his freshman year. But Calhoun's thing was you always want to step into the NBA prepared. The NBA is not where you learn to play basketball, and Reed Sheppard certainly is not going to learn how to play basketball there. But you want to be in the best position possible. And so the question becomes, and by the way, maybe the question isn't even on the table. Maybe Reed's already made his decision, maybe his inner circle, and that's his prerogative. But all I'm saying is, if you don't think you're ready, or you do think there's things to improve on, I think it's at least worth the conversation, given the money that you can make at college. Beyond that, I also think this is interesting. And we talked about this on the live stream on Tuesday night, excuse me. I said, I do think it's a little different for a Reed Sheppard versus a DJ Wagner, versus a Paolo Banchero, versus a whomever. Because Reed Sheppard did not step on campus at Kentucky knowing he was a one and done. And I always think it's a little different for the guys that come in expecting to be there 2, 3, 4 years. And then all of a sudden you have immediate success and people start talking about you as a one and done. And I've talked to a lot of those guys who were just like, I wasn't ready after 1 year because I wasn't planning on leaving after 1 year. I mean, I remember years ago, I talked to Daniel Gafford about this. I don't know if you remember Daniel Gafford. He played at Arkansas. I believe he's still in the NBA. But we talked a lot about the possibility of he could have gone after his first year. But he said, look, man, I was a small town kid from a small town in Arkansas. And all of a sudden, I'm halfway through my freshman year. People are talking about me in the NBA. I thought I was a 4-year college player, and maybe then I would be ready. Gafford came back for a second year. I believe he ended up being a first-round pick and had a ton of success from there. And so I only bring it up to very simply say, I don't think it's as easy as just saying, well, you have to go. You don't have to go, especially in the NIL world where you're making a ton of money. So I think it'll be interesting to follow. Again, I still think he's probably leaving, but I think it's a little bit more complex for him because he's a Kentucky kid, because he's making a lot of money. And I think there's a lot of other variables as well. One, do you think there's room? One, are you one? Let's even, I'm even going backtracking here, but one, do you believe you're ready? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Two, I think it's also worth noting. Do you believe that there's any value in coming back, whether it's monetarily or from a perspective of getting better? Can you be better than you are this year? And the answer might be no after you just dropped 32 in an SEC road gym. And I think three, there's the other human variables. One, do you want to come back? Is the situation going to be any better for you? We kind of know what Kentucky's roster is going to look like next year. Jaden Quayton's 5-star center, Boogie Flan, 5-star guard, Travis Perry, another Kentucky kid who's coming in next year. So on the one hand, you could sit there and say, well, you'll be the star. On the other hand, you might not have as much star power as this year. The other thing too is, he came in with Rob and Rob Dillingham and DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw, and maybe he's doesn't want to stay without them. That's something to consider as well. That group clearly is very tight-knit, as you could see as they hugged and swarmed him after that shot. And so the question becomes, would he want to stick around if all those other guys are leaving? I don't know what Reed Sheppard's plans are. And as I said, I still think it's a long shot. But what I will say, I don't think it's quite as crazy as other people might. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Also, make sure to download full episodes of the Aaron Torres Pod every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, make sure to do so.